Hi, everyone. This is Hillary with Vintrace. Welcome to the costing webinar. I also have Chris on the line answering any questions that you guys have. Make sure you guys send in your questions, and then at the end of the webinar, Chris will come on live with me as well, and we'll verbally answer questions, walk through anything that you guys have. We are recording this webinar, so we will post it to our Hi, everybody. This is Hillary. Welcome to our costing webinar 2019, and we will begin. So the cool thing about Vintrace allows you to track wine production costs using multiple different ways. During today's webinar, we will cover all the different ways costs can be added to a wine or case goods. So the first place I'm going to start is looking at a wine. So pulling up one of your wines, going to the cost tab. The first thing I should mention, if you pull up a wine and you do not see this cost tab, that means you do not have permission to see costs. So please, maybe I should start there. So make sure going through your address book, manage your system users, you click on, so I'll go find myself. And then down here, your permissions. You want to make sure that you can, if you need to adjust costs, and then there's a second one that says you're able to also view costs. So do make sure you have both those permissions in order to do everything that we're going to cover today. All right, so going back to our wine and the costing tab, these are all the categories. These are the default cost categories. You're also able to create subcategories within these categories. These are the main categories where you'll add in all of your costs. And you can see below, Vintrace will keep a summary of everything that has added cost to this wine, and also cost has been removed due to packaging, selling, or blending. And if you'd like this date to go farther back, you can exit out and update, or also show any reverses, undos, and delete operations. They'll show there as well. All right, so next we're going to work on is creating custom cost items. So that'll be through winery setup, costing items. So this is where you can go through and create and also inactivate any costing items that you already have. So I'm going to go new costing item. I am going to call this 2019 just fees. Name. And then your default price can just be 0. You have to put something there. And then cost type. So where do you want this to go? So fees are going to go into seller work. And then price per unit is the most common, and you'll use it from almost everything. Save. And then we'll create one more. So 2019 bottling fees. And then I want this one to attach to packaging because it is a bottling fee. So the first one I attach to seller work. The second one I'm attaching to packaging. And then again, a price per each or per unit. Okay. So that's creating. If you need to inactivate any old ones that are in here, you can just click on them, and then there's an inactive button, and then you can hit save. And then also, while we are in winery setup, if you go into your general stock items and you go to your additives, you can see that some items may have a default price. You want to make sure is if oak chip prices are always the same, it's always 20 bucks a pound, then you can leave that. But if you get a different price, sometimes it's $18, sometimes it's $30. I would recommend going in here and leaving this number blank. You do not need to have a number there. By having it blank, when you receive in the goods, you'll have to look at the invoice to know how much you paid. All right, so that's creating your cost items. Next, we're going to add costs to an operation. So we're going to pull up one of our wines again. So basically we're adding costs to a work order. So if I go to history, and then you want to find the operation. So this KMBS ad, I want to add a labor fee to it. So I can click view, and down on the bottom has add cost. So then I can click on it. You'll want to double check the date. You want this date to be the same date as the operation. So go back to March 1 and 849. And then we'll put in our 2019, brings up our fees, and we're going to charge, say, $20. You can call this. And then save. So the cool thing about Vintrace, like I was saying earlier, Vintrace will backdate. So as we apply this a month ago, that cost will flow through Vintrace and split up that $20 to any other wines that need to attach that $20 to, or it might be down to 50 cents, $1. Vintrace will flow through and do that. Okay, so that's after a work order's been complete. You can go back to the history and add a cost to that work order. So it could be filtration, labor, or also bottling. So we did a packaging here. You can go through and add any cost to the bottling. So this could be our bottling. And it took us 5 hours, and they charge us $250 an hour. So again, you want to double check the date. Remember, Vintrace is everything's about the date. So we'll go 1/17 at 15:03. And then save. All right, so that's going through adding costs for filtration, packaging, or just anything. All right, so next we're going to do is called an ad hoc cost as well. So that's kind of adding it to a very specific work order adding cost. If just in general, you paid a consultant to come and taste this wine and give you some feedback, so you don't really have a job to attach the cost to, it's more of what we call an ad hoc. You can just go action, add cost. So it's not connected to any work order. You can say the date you want to do this, and then you choose the costing item. So we're going to call it Jim. Jim came and did this and charged us $300. Thanks. So the first way add cost is to the work order. The second way is by just adding the $300. Now if we go to the costing tab, Vintrace will tell you it's trying to calculate all the costs. It takes it a couple minutes because Vintrace is flowing through, making sure if anything needs to be added, it'll go through and do that. So you can see down here is my $300 gym cost. And then if I scroll down, you can also see the packaging and all that. Then I'm going to, and then if by refreshing it, let me go back to the costing tab. You can see it's still calculating. So this cost is not completely accurate yet. One thing to be aware about this costing is this is the price per gallon cost, and this is per vessel, and this is batch. So if this wine was in 2 tanks, this cost would show you just the tank we're looking at, but then the batch would show maybe this would be like $30,000 because we have a few gallons in a porta tank or something like that. All right, so the next cost we're going to cover is allocation. So this is kind of overhead costs between your monthly bills, PG&E, your employee fee, anything like that. So to do allocations, up at the top is accounts, cost allocation. So with cost allocation, there's 3 different ways to apply the cost. Method 1 is by volume, end of period, meaning on today's date, whatever wine is here will get the cost. So if you shipped out a bunch of wine yesterday, then those wines will not get any cost because they're not here today. By volume by day, when we click that, you'll get a date range. So you could say any wines that were at our winery from March 1st through April 1st or March 31st will get X amount. So then Vintrace will divvy up that cost on a price per gallon per day fee. The third option is manually. So you will manually export out the list of all of the wines, and then you will manually tell Vintrace how much to add per wine. So Vintrace does not do any weighting calculations. It does not apportion the cost for you. So this is a great way if you are just starting with Vintrace, or you're just going to start doing the costing, and your accountant gave you, even for 2018, if your accountant gave you kind of your cost per lot, you can take this date back to, December 31st, January 1st, and then manually upload. So export out the list of your wines and then upload the wines back in with the cost your accountant gave you. So we're going to go with by volume, end of period, and I'm going to pick the date March 31st. And then my default item, 2019 fees, my cost is going to be $10,000, and my note's going to be March bill 2019. Okay, so again, complete all the top boxes. Then now we're going to go down here from search to bring in our wines. So from this search, again, it's telling you the date range being on March 31st. You choose either a specific wine or a specific vintage, or type, being are you just applying cost to red wine, white wine, rosé, or certain categories, or an owner. So you only want to apply cost to your wines, maybe not another client's wines. So what I'm going to do is just click 17, and then it's just going to bring up all of my 17 wines. There's a lot of wine in this database, so I don't want to plug it up because it will take a while to load them all into the allocation console. So I'm going to say use all. And the other thing is you can select, if you're only adding to certain wines, you can select the certain ones you want to apply cost to. So we're going to say use all. So it'll bring in all 22 wines into my cost allocation console. So Vintrace has gone through and created a weighting based on how many gallons that lot has. And then up here, we can say apportion. So then Vintrace will apportion out those gallons. So you can see down here, it tells me there's 22 batches, the total gallons, and then the $10,000 equals 27 cents per gallon is being added to the wine. So once you're happy, you can double check if all this looks good, or if you want to export this out to an Excel file, you can double check, look at it, and then you can also upload it back in. If everything looks good, then we can hit save. So that's doing the cost allocation. So what looks a little bit different if I do the cost allocation by volume by day, the one thing I want you to be aware of, if you are doing the by volume by day, it is great for the non-harvest months. If you decide to do the by volume by day throughout the year, when harvest comes, I recommend not to do that because your white wine, your sparkling wine, your rosés will be getting more cost because they came in first. So typically with harvest, I recommend that you just pick like the end of the harvest. So if you are here in the Northern Hemisphere, you can pick like December 1st or something after all of your wine's been pressed, not en masse, and then you can divvy up that cost. So if we do this by period, again, I can do my cost item. We're going to do, say, $6,000 this time. And then from search, 2017. So you can see now there's 23 wines because there was a wine that existed during that date range that was no longer there on March 31st. So we'll say use all. I might just make this the same so we can see. So also, and we'll just call this by day, and then I hit apportion, and then I'll portion out that $10,000. So now you can see it's broken down to not even a penny a gallon per day. So then I will save this as well. So those are the two ways that Vintrace is calculating out the volumes for you, or the third way would be the manual export and import. If you have any questions about that, just give us a call and we can help you, walk you through that. So now we're going to talk about purchase orders. To create a new purchase order, we go up here to inventory, new purchase order. And so with purchase order, Vintrace is automatically creating an auto code. If you want that auto code to not say, it starts with the V for Vintrace, Vintrace PO, and then the number, you can go, if I open up a second Vintrace screen, go to the gears, workflow, auto codes. This is where you can go into the POs and you can change it. So for example, ours actually says 2018_1. So I probably want to change that to say the word attribute should say, oops. No, you can't really do that. So you had to put that. So then I'd have to remember in 2019 to change that to a 19. So I can do that right now. Change that to 19, add it back, remove. And this should be increasing 0. So, and then save. And then apply. Then we can go back to our other Vintrace screen. You can X this out and redo it. So then it'll refresh to our 2019. We will choose our vendor. You can click magnifying glass to see the list of vendors that we have available. If you aren't seeing your vendor, you can go here to create and create a new one. So we're going to go ATP. Delivery date, we're going to schedule this for Friday. It's new, it's not fulfilled, it's coming to this winery. The freight, they already told us, is going to be $100. And then the stock items we are going to bring in. We're going to bring in some DAP. And this is where I said earlier through the winery setup, DAP has a default price of $1.20 per kilo. So that's something to be aware of, is if that's not the case, if it's changing and going through winery setup and erasing that price, we'll leave that blank for you to fill in what the price was. You also have a box up here to make any notes or anything, and then you can add lines for other items. KBS, you can see it also had a price per kilo, and say that was wrong. We can change it. We got it for $6.50, and we got 10. And then when you hit save and print, if you just hit save, it'll save and not pop anything up. By hitting save and print, the PDF will pop up for you. And you will want to make sure that you do have your Vintrace address in your address book, and then also that ATP has an address and information through the address book. Alrighty. So that's creating the purchase orders. Now the inventory is here. So we go to inventory, receive. So with this, we can say the date, so it came in today. And with the purchase order, we click on the magnifying glass, and this will bring up all of your purchase orders that are not fulfilled or only partly. So then you can scroll through and find the one that you're looking for. So this is mine. I can click on it. And by having the purchase order, it auto fills in everything for you. So it says you ordered 25 kilos. How many kilos did you actually receive? So this is a good time to edit if you didn't get all the kilos, if you got more or less, where you can change all that. And then if all that looks good, Vintrace auto filled in the freight price for you. And then we need to hit save. Oops, I didn't say who the carrier was. FedEx delivered it. Hit save again. And this is telling us that both DAP and KNBS have batch tracking. So we need to make sure we go in here, click add a lot code. I always like to put the year at the end, so in case I can double check or inactivate anything that's older. And then say okay. And then now we can save this. And then Vintrace will pop up your receipt. So that's creating a purchase order and then receiving items off the purchase order. So say winemaker received in those items and you guys actually got a discount on that DAP. So by going through the bottles down at the bottom, we can find that DAP. We'll go %sign DAP. And then we will find our DAP. I did not pay attention to, I guess I can look for the lot code right here. So there's the lot code, the one I just, 25 kilos. If I click on it, and then you can see the order price 120. I go to the costing. Oops. Update. Here we go. Go to history, find the receivable of our 25 kilos. You can click view. And then this is where you can go in, hit correct, and then you can edit the cost. So actually the DAP, we got it for 80 cents. Then recalculate that out. So that ends up being $20. And then down a reason, change cost. And then you want to make sure you hit save and not now and save. With today, since I just created this purchase order 2 minutes ago, it won't really affect. But if this is something you are going back 2, 3 weeks, a month, be very careful that you just hit save. So it's just reprinting your receipt. Got it. So now if we refresh this, it's now order price is set to the 80 cents. Alrighty, let's see. And if you want to look at all the purchase orders that you've created that have not come in yet, going to accounts and going to purchase orders, this will bring a list of all of your purchase orders that you've been written during this month, or you can go farther out and also farther back. And then hitting search, it'll list them all out, or also not fulfilled, partly, or fulfilled. And then hit search, and then it'll bring in the one that we just did. And then you do have the option to print out a CSV or PDF as well. Alrighty, so next we're going to do about adding costs to dry goods at a later date. So pretty similar like I did with editing the cost on the DAP, you can also go into an item, find Here, say this. Go to the history tab. And then when you see when it was received, view it. And then if this didn't have a price, then you can add cost. Oops, not add cost, sorry. Oops, sorry. View. Oops, not the packaging. View on the receival. And then going in and correct the cost here. All right, so next we're going to do is managing your day-to-day cost operations through the cost admin console. So going up to accounts, cost admin. This is a really good one to see a certain wine, what you've done, cost that's happened. So just by hitting search, it's just going to bring up everything that's applied cost, no matter the lot or the batch. If you want to look at a single wine, this is how you can go to costing, go batch. Find Tillery, that's the wine. The date range, I want to look at just kind of within the last couple months, and then hit search. This will show all of the cost allocations that's been added to this wine. So you can see where it started at 36. Then we did a packaging, so $4,000 was removed. And then we transferred wine. We added an ad hoc, an ad cost. We did a cost allocation analysis. To say this analysis price was wrong, it should be $45. You can click edit, change the price to $45 is the operation cost. And then you can also then make a reason why you changed or did a adjustment. Change cost and then save. So then Vintrace will update that to $45. Anything that is a cost allocation, if you click here, it'll bring up that allocation that we just did a little bit ago. The one thing about this is with the correction, all you can do is remove wine from the list and it removes that chunk. So if I hit correct and then I remove this first wine that has $1,800, Vintrace will remove that wine and remove the $1,800, but will not reapportion out that cost to all of the wines. So if you made a mistake and that wine should not have been included, and that $1,800 should be spread out among all of these lots, then you will want to reverse and undo this allocation and do it over. So just so you're aware of, when you hit the correction, any lots that you delete or volumes that or amounts that you change, it does not reapportion out that cost. All righty, and then you can also run a report, say a PDF you want to see, and this will break out all of the costing and who did them as well. So if you're saying who did these, you can go and see, all right, Hillary did these and demo user did these. And this can also be done as a CSV as well. All right, so next is adding cost to fruit and bulk wine that you receive. So the first place to add cost to fruit would be through the gears, production, and that's grower contracts. So by creating a grower contract, it'll automatically attach a price per ton as you bring in that block. So first place, if you are set up with contracts, I would recommend creating grower contracts. Again, grower contract is a permission. So if you log into Vintrace and you do not see this folder That means you do not have permission to see grower contracts. All right, so next is if you don't have grower contracts set up, when you bring in fruit, so I'll just do operation, go down here, new, unplanned arrival. On the costing and analysis tab, this is where you can add in your total price or price per ton that you paid $5,000. And this, you can either add it at the time of receival, or you can go back to a wine. So if I type in 19, and go here and click correct, you can go in and adjust costs and add in the cost for those fruit, or change it if it's supposed to be more or less. You can go in and change and adjust costs or add costs as well. If you do have a lot of lots and you don't want to go one by one, you can go to your report, vintage harvest, and go to your grape delivery report. Make sure you select the vintage, change the format into a CSV, and then hit generate. So this will generate a CSV of all of your grape deliveries. And then what you can do is, if you don't have anything in the MOG weight, or you can enter in a new field, this is for the total cost. And then you will tell us the 7 tons you paid $70,000 for. The 2 tons, you paid $10,000 for. Once you've entered in the total cost for everything, you can save this file and then email it to support, and then we are able to upload it for you. With your fruit cost, if we also do the grape delivery report in a PDF, and then we hit generate, oops, it did not register as a PDF. One more time, and then generate. This will show any of your fruit that do have price, anything that does not as well. So it's another really good kind of fruit costing report. You can see at a glance what lot or what fruit intakes was assigned cost and which ones were not. Alrighty. So next is receiving in bulk wine. So through operations, bulk intake. This tab over is your costing tab, and this is where you can go in and add in your cost per total or cost per gallon. And if you do have a metric database, it will be cost per liter. Alrighty, and then the next we're going to talk about is all the different reports, the different costing reports we have in Vintrace. So the first one is the cost detail report. This report is both good for wine and case goods, stock, additives, or anything. So we want to bring up a wine first. So I'll bring up my Hillary. And then down here is report, and it's a cost report. So this will produce a detailed PDF cost breakdown showing the individual cost categories as well as a cost per unit, and also showing the cost history events that has impacted this wine. You can kind of scroll through. Here's kind of the grand total, your price per unit, your total cost, and then here's everything that's added any cost to that wine. So that is through reports, cost report. The next report is an inventory stock report. So that's going through our reports at the bottom. Inventory. The first one, inventory stock report. Changing this format into a CSV. And then you can also include breakout costing. So if you don't tick that box, it'll just show you the total cost. By ticking the breakout costing, it'll show you bulk wine costs, fruit costs, packaging, overhead, cellar work, all those categories. And you can also narrow down that you just want to see bottled wine. And then we hit generate, then this CSV will just show you the category that you've ticked off. So you don't want everything in your whole database. You just want these two categories. So this brought everything that's in those two categories. And then if I scroll over, here gives you your price per unit, your total cost, and then breaks out fruit cost, bulk wine, additive, cellar work, the breakout of everything. All right, the next report we're going to show is the wine/juice costing report. Now this report is only for bulk wine. So we go to bulk wine. We scroll down to our wine/juice. And this report is for a single wine. This report allows you to see the costing events between, your given date range and all the costing items that have impact this wine. So I type in 17 CH Hillary, it'll autofill in, and then we hit generate. And then this will show you, this will show you the total gallons. So you can see at the beginning, it started at 1,400 gallons, and then it jumped up to 1,900. The total cost, the cost per gallon, and then where things changed. It added 500 gallons, which added a cost. And then it tells you what every transaction was that increased or added that cost. The next one is the bulk cost summary. So the first report is on a single batch only, but the bulk cost summary report, you can again choose only a single wine, or by not putting a batch, you will get all of your wines. So this report shows for either all bulk wines or one wine, kind of an opening and closing balance. So I'm going to go back to January. So I kind of want the first quarter, and I'm not going to enter a batch, and then I'm just going to hit generate. What this is going to do is going to bring up all of the wines and opening, closing transactions. So here is, so now if I click here, you can see the date range, opening volume, opening cost, and then as you scroll through, everything that's added cost to the wine, everything that got cellar labor, it'll show all the lots as you go across. Anything that's added wine, so you can see also down below, everything's got pluses and minuses, and then you have your closing volume and then your closing cost. So again, this was not choosing a batch, this was bringing up all of the wines. So I'm going to show you a little different, is now choosing a wine. So now we'll generate that same report just looking at one wine. And you can also summarize by program. So if you are allocating your wine to a reserve program, your estate program, your bulk market program, it will group them by program. So then here's my Chardonnay Hillary. Again, my opening balance, there was 0 gallons. We transferred in. And there's all the costs moving into the blend, change in a batch name, I packaged, closing volume, and closing cost. All right. Our next report is going to talk about from the bulk wine, our bulk stock report. So again, the cool thing about this report is it's as of whatever date you would like. So I'm going to say as of as of March 31st, we want this to be a CSV format, which by changing it to a CSV, it will show costing and then also break out costing. So this report is showing all of your bulk wine as of March 31st and showing you the total cost and the breakout cost. And then we'll do one more report, and then we will open it up for questions. So here's giving us all of our wine batches. As I scroll over, then it's giving us our total cost. So price per unit, total cost, and then breaking out the cost per category. And again, you can only see all of this costing if you have the permission. So our last report we're going to cover is through inventory. And this is the packaging manufacturing report. So again, I'm going to go back to January and leave it as a PDF and hit generate. And this is a really great packaging report that you can look at and look at any of these wines. So this packaging here, it showed the wine. And then it showed the capsules and corks and everything that included on that wine price. And then it says there's 190 cases, $77 per case. So it kind of breaks down all the costing that is applied to that wine or that case good. All righty, so that's everything I have for the webinar today. What we're going to do is look at all the questions that people have been asking. And also, Chris, if you want to come on, if any of these questions you've answered you think would be good to talk about with everybody on the line, please do so as well.
Alrighty, Chris? So we had a question earlier about adding costs to operations, specifically lab analysis. So Hilary, if you just want to bring up some analysis that you've got in there somewhere, and we can take a look at that. So just like any other operation, if you're adding cost, you can generally just find it in your history wherever it is. And if you click the view button just against that operation, you'll just see in the bottom left-hand corner there, we've got an add cost. So it doesn't matter what operation you're looking at. You can jump in there, click add cost, and then apply whatever the cost is. So you set up those cost items like we looked at. Obviously make sure your dates all correct, and then just apply that cost in there, and that'll just get added on for each and every lab analysis that you've entered. And so that one should just show up in our cost tab like all the other costs, and you can put it under whichever category you like, but you'll see down the bottom there it's just added into the total cost for that batch.
So what was another question you would like to talk about? Or
let's see, what have we got? Here we go, we've got some new ones. So we've got one for how do I assign costing to barrels? So with costing to barrels, there's a couple of bits to set up, and I'll follow up and send through sort of our documentation to it, but effectively you've got to go through each barrel, and you can do this via a spreadsheet. You've got to assign a costing item to those. So you'll have to decide which barrel is going to apply which cost. So you can have it, French oak might be a certain dollar per year or day, depending on how you want to work that. And then we've got a cost, sort of storage cost generator, and that will basically run through whatever date range you provide, and then it will allocate costs to those batch. So Hilda, if you just want to jump into our setup, winery setup, and have a look at our barrels. And if you just pick something that's got some wine in it. So if you jump onto the advanced tab, and we've got the storage cost item on the left-hand side down the bottom there. So that is basically just one of those cost items that we've been looking at throughout this whole webinar. So you just need to assign one of those cost items. The key thing is you need to make sure that it has a per day or a per year unit. So we'll just set up a new one here for that. And that default value will just apply for the year or the day, depending on how you're going to do it. So you can obviously set up different fees and charges for different barrels.
So this needs to be per day, right?
Per day, yep. Perfect, so that looks good. So we can save that and save our barrel. So that just needs to be put onto all your barrels. If there's barrels that you no longer want costing to work, you can sort of remove that. Now if we jump out of our setup and we can head into our tools, and it's under the costing, we've got the storage cost option. And so what this will do, it may not work because we haven't really fully configured it in here, but essentially it'll look from the previous day that you've applied storage costs up until that effective date that you've got there. So it'll, might do it for the month if you're running it monthly, and it will add costs. So if you click that preview storage costs link just towards the bottom of that, if we're lucky, so we've got some results in there. It'll basically start from the last time we run storage costs up until the date we've selected, gives you the barrel, the price per day, and then the cost that's being added to that particular batch. So you're essentially just running this and saving it. Each time you empty a barrel, the costs will get applied to that batch sort of automatically. These ones are more just for it's been in that barrel for the whole period. We're going to add that cost. And then we've just got the follow-up of can you have the costing for those barrels depreciate? We don't have that automatically sort of built in. All you really need to do is save your costs up until a certain point, and then just go into those barrels, and you can either adjust the storage item or the storage cost item that you've got linked, or you can just change the default value. So we put it at $1.50. Next year it might be $1, so we just have to go back through and change those. And then the next time you run this generator, it'll just use that new figure. So it's really just running this and updating costs as you go along. Okay. What other questions have we got? So we've got a question. Generally, do your users use the costing for management purposes or financial accounting purposes? It's probably a little bit of both. So some people just use it for working out how much, I guess, things cost. So the cost of their production, how much all their dry goods are costing them, things like that. A lot of those people will also then export that information and put it into their accounting package, or have it linked up to Xero that we interface with. So it's a combination of both. I'd say most people, if they're putting the costs in here, would at least transfer something to an accounting package. So it's probably a combination of the two. Obviously, you can set up general ledger accounts in Vintrace and sort of get journals being created and things like that. Not everybody does that. Some people will just use a report to export it, but it's a bit of a mix of both for that question. And we've got one, so for empty barrels, can you get a report so that you can allocate the cost of storage for an empty barrel into overheads or somewhere else? The only reports that we've got that'll show you empty barrels is you can use our barrel search and select the empty barrels, but that's really only going to give you empty barrels as of the time you're running that report, so it won't look back to last week and say what was empty. There are other reports but it's only on a barrel per barrel basis at the moment. So for those ones, it's a little bit tricky to work out. So generally, you can do it at the end of the month. So you could always run a stock report and say, show me everything that was full, which barrels were full, and then work out from those what were empty. But yeah, you would need to sort of manually work out the allocation that you plan on doing with your overheads, because we don't have anything inbuilt to our cost allocation console to handle that. So that would have to be determined somewhere with whatever reports that I guess you use, depending on how you're going to actually allocate that cost.
Because Vintrace will do more of a barrel cost allocation if you do have the client billing that you're charging a client for storage of empty barrels, say it's $5 a month, and full barrels are $8. Vintrace can do that, which is one of the client billing module, but not just the cost of goods module.
We did have a question earlier about just adding the purchase orders dashlet to the dashboard. So we've got that sitting on the main screen there. It's pretty handy because you can just click onto those purchase orders and open it up. If you want any dashlets made, whether it's costing or otherwise, generally on the right-hand side of that main screen, there is a little configure dashboard link. And so you can jump into that configure dashboard. You can add or remove whatever you've got, but there's also that little add dashlet option on the right-hand side. So you can search through there and see if any information of those dashlets is useful. There's quite a few costing ones. Purchase and sales orders will show up in there as well. So you can configure that however you like. If there's something that we don't have in there, or you've got a good idea for one that you'd like added, we'll have an email option, or you can just contact support and ask us directly, and we'll just go about and set that up. And once that's ready, you'll be able to just jump back into this list, and you'll have that new dash that will give you the name of it, and that can be put onto your dashboard to use in future. I think that's most of our questions. So if there's any more, please send those through.
Alrighty, thank you everybody for joining us for the costing webinar, and then look out for our email. We will be doing another webinar later this month. And if you wanna, we will also send you guys a link to rewatch this webinar. And if you missed the email, you didn't get it, please email into support and we'll be able to send you the link to the webinar. All right, everybody, have a great day, and make sure you download the Vintrace app. Thank you.